folks, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to go ahead and get started here. I know I'm a few seconds early, but there's always a rush of folks that come in right around the start. So I'm going to try to get some of the housekeeping out of the way. One of the primary questions that we get often is this being recorded? Absolutely, it's being recorded, so don't worry. You can provide this to others after the event. And they'll be able to take advantage of it as well. So hello, everybody, officially. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. This is Dave Rosendahl from Mindfire speaking. I'm going to be the moderator today. And welcome to today's panel, where we're going to look at life and communication, sales, marketing, leadership, through this storm that we're in right now, and also looking at what it might look like as the storm passes. So if you're ready to get started, I want to make sure you know where the chat is. Go over there and drop a yes in the chat box so that we know you're ready to get started, that you can hear me, and that you can see the screen. We're going to keep this very interactive, so I want to make sure you know where that chat is. Go drop a yes, put some exclamation marks on it. Show me that you're excited and that you're ready to get into this material. I know we are in very somber times, but I think it's very important that we stay in touch with one another and that we keep communicating, because that's essential. Now, as I go through this material, there's a few things I want you to know. Number one, I've been getting messages from Zoom that they are incredibly overwhelmed during these times. You know, kids and certainly my children and others, schools throughout the world, throughout the nation are using Zoom. Companies are doing things like we're doing today. So I hope we don't crash here in Zoom, but I just want to give that disclaimer. There's always a chance that we may overwhelm Zoom. Secondly, what we're trying to do here is create insights for you from a diversity of views that will give you insights into the topics that you're all interested in learning more about today, okay? We've received a bunch of questions from all of you, and Riel, who is working with you in the chat there, has done an incredible job to try to consolidate those into a few key categories. I'm going to show you what those are here in a minute. We are experts in some categories, but not in others, okay? So we're going to give that disclaimer now, that our intention is to open up this dialogue, to talk about what we're facing and offer these unique perspectives during what is a very uncertain time. We're an extremely optimistic group, but we're going to give it to you straight, okay? We're not going to sugarcoat stuff. We're not going to spin anything. We want to tell you what it is that these experts are seeing. That's what I want them to do. And I want us to work together to have a productive conversation and help us all look forward. But just want to make sure this disclaimer is clear. We're not going to make light of the situation. We recognize the severity of this pandemic that we're in. And whenever we're prognosticating, we're going to give you that. Whenever we're answering from the data, we're going to let you know so that you can take that and use it to inform your thinking. So with that disclaimer, let me introduce the panel today. You'll see them here on the screen. Make sure you're looking here at the screen. We've got Mark Cochran, Executive Director, Johns Hopkins Healthcare Solutions, Dr. Michael Libman, Head of Infectious Diseases at McGill University Health Center, Larry Lubin, President and Co-Founder at BlueRush, Dr. Josh Luke, former hospital CEO, healthcare futurist. He's an author, podcaster, and a keynote speaker. And Dean Petrulakis, the Senior Vice President of Sales at LCP. So what I want to do now, so you know who's on the panel here, is give them each about 20 seconds to introduce themselves. And Mark, I'm going to start with you. If you could just tell the folks here a little bit about yourself, would love to hear from you.
Thank you, David. Mark Cochran. I'm a molecular biologist. I've worked through my career in drug discovery and drug and vaccine discovery and development in both pharmaceuticals and in the biotech industry and also venture capital. Presently with Johns Hopkins Medicine, where I commercialize faculty innovations and bring them to market if warranted. Thank you. Nice to meet you all.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, Mark. We really appreciate it. And Dr. Michael Libman, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm a specialist in infectious disease. I'm also a medical microbiologist working at McGill in Montreal, Canada, for those of you who somehow may not know that. I am also a co-director of what's called the GeoSentinel Network, which is a CDC-sponsored network of about 70 institutions who work on sentinel identification of outbreaks and movement of diseases across borders. And I know very little about business. That's why I went into medicine.
Well, thank you for being here, Doctor. And I know that you're actually in the hospital now. You've given us that warning that the Wi-Fi may be spotty from time to time, but we so appreciate you being here with us. Larry Lubin, a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you, David, and our panelists and everybody who's joined us. I'm Larry Lubin, co-founder, and I'm the president of BlueRush. And I spent my career making complex things easy to understand, possibly because I didn't understand them myself. And that's actually been through digital innovations. And our company, BlueRush, specializes in communication engagement, that's services and software solutions. And we have a unique platform in video, and Dave mentioned Zoom, which is really about a virtual agent, so that when you can't be in front of people, you can personalize communications and information and scale it in the millions, taking data and transforming them to customer stories. So I have to say I've been fortunate over my career to work with leaders in financial services and healthcare, conceiving of these sensitive communications. And today, in the midst of this pandemic, our company is really in the help mode. It's about leveraging what we can to help everyone in the organization get through this complex time. So thank you. I'm just delighted to be here.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate it. And thank you for helping sponsor today's session and bring everybody here together. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Josh Luke. I'd love to hear just a little bit about you and introduce yourself to the folks here.
Hey, David, thanks for having me. I know you and I have worked with each other for a while, and these are definitely new times for us. As you mentioned, I became a hospital CEO when I was 32 years old, did that for 10 years, and then kind of hit the keynote speaking circuit after the Affordable Care Act because I'm a big proponent of population health and the just focusing on patients in the healthcare environment. And I coined the phrase EHC. We all need to become engaged healthcare consumers in order to be able to afford healthcare in the future. And so that's going to be a big theme of my comments today, that now more than ever with the pandemic in our midst, we need to engage in the healthcare process, because normally I'm telling you that to save money, but it also makes you a better healthcare. It makes you healthier. And with that, I have a podcast. I'm a keynote speaker, and you can follow me at Dr. Josh Luke on LinkedIn if you're interested in a daily coronavirus update for other parents and entrepreneurs like myself trying to answer some of those questions. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate it. Really appreciate you being here. And last but certainly not least, Dean Petrulakis, introduce yourself, and then we'll get this panel started.
Thanks, Dave. You hear me okay?
Yes, sir. We hear you.
All right, good. I want to make sure my audio was good. It's a pleasure to be on this webinar, and thanks for having me. I'm honored to be on the panel with all these other fine folks. So, Dean Petrulakis, Senior Vice President Sales at LCP. We're in the print marketing space here in Chicagoland suburbs, and I've been in the business for over 20 years. So I hope to bring some value to people today from my perspective as it comes from the print market and from the sales perspective. So again, happy to be on this webinar.
Thank you, Dean. I appreciate it. And then for those of you who have never had a chance to interact with me, or that if we've never met, my name is Dave Rosendahl. I'm the co-founder and president at Mindfire. My job today is going to be to moderate this group and get us through as many of your questions as possible. My organization is at heart a software company that creates a new and engaging way for folks to talk to their customers and prospects through what we call omni-channel communication. And now more than ever, folks, especially in today's situation, using the right channel to reach our audience, to be able to engage them and provide them with necessary information is just absolutely imperative. So that's the angle from which I'm bringing some insights today, and I'm honored to be able to be with these incredible folks to get into your questions. And so what we did in terms of today's format, here's how we're going to run it. What we did is in advance, we've solicited questions from all of you. Thank you to the hundreds of you that have submitted thousands of questions. Through those, Rial, who is talking to many of you in the chat, has tried to parse and bucket them into 4 categories. Those categories are questions related to the science of what we're currently experiencing, daily life, business, and then what communication looks like now and after COVID-19. And so we're going to try to address the most common, pressing, top-of-mind questions, and then move to a period of Q&A to try to get through as many of the additional questions as possible. I see the chat is going nuts right now. Keep it going. Stay interactive. Keep asking those questions. Riel also has a Google Doc for me that I can see here on my left, where she is summarizing your questions. Keep those coming in. We want to try to get as much answered as possible. All right? So if anything is said today where you want additional clarification, or if you're looking for more information, please let us know. This is all about helping you get what you need in order to take steps forward. So with that, What I want to do now is start with the first section of questions here around the science of what we're looking at from a medical perspective, really focusing in on the medical experts here on our panel, understanding where we are right now. And so I'm going to direct the majority of these questions to our healthcare professionals that are here on the panel. So men, get ready here. I'm about to throw you some questions. So the first one, I think, Michael, I'll direct this one at you. Just generally speaking, from a healthcare perspective, what are you experiencing right now? What are we experiencing right now as we sit here today in this panel?
Well, that depends entirely on where you are. I think that there are, as a rule, most of Europe, and especially Italy, is well advanced in this. United States, I think, is not that far behind, and then some other places like here in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, probably still a little bit behind them. So it really depends. I think everybody knows now, and China I'm not even talking about. We don't know exactly what's going on there right now. But I will say that I think everybody knows that Italy, especially the north, it's a catastrophe. It's a true catastrophe. Europe is struggling, and we're going to see what the measures that they took, maybe late, but maybe with some benefit. We'll see what trajectory they follow from Italy, and then it'll be a question of whether here, United States, Canada, whether we can learn from this and have enough time to avert some of the bad things that we've seen, especially in Italy.
So what do you think, and I know, again, nobody has a crystal ball here, Mark, but if you just give us some guidance around how long do you think this is going to last, A, and B, there were numerous questions around, is there a vaccine, will there be a vaccine, and what might that look like?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is that we really don't know how long this will last, but it will come to a peak and then it will wane. I'm really encouraged by what I see through innovations and through a lot of the work that's been done to really shave off the regulatory hurdles that have to be overcome in order to advance these innovations. So to your first question, really China is the best gauge for how long this will last. And I do believe that there will be probably two waves. I'm thinking that because we don't really know what the denominator is in the United States right now, and several other countries because of the slow, introduction of testing. But once we know what that denominator is of patients who are infected, and then once we can track, the consequence of those infections, and then see how those numbers pan out. But I guess the key thing is that I really do see a light at the end of the tunnel. The fact that there have been no new reported cases in China in the last day or two is extremely encouraging. But more than anything, I'm quite excited about the innovations that we're seeing in therapeutics and in vaccines. I'm really encouraged by how the process of bringing those into clinical study and ultimately into patient treatment is really fast. If you compare this to the HIV era, we are years ahead of where we were in that era today with this disease. So I'm really quite encouraged by that.
And so you mentioned, innovations, and I know that was a question that a lot of the audience came in here kind of wondering, like, what are the innovations that are going to come out of this? What are some of the things that this situation, although dire and significant, what is it that gives us hope for the future that something good will come out of this? So I'll address that to Mark, and then maybe Michael, if you want to chime in on that as well.
Okay, so in terms of the innovations, you really just have to look at the number of patents that have been filed. I mean, there's been 500 patents filed in the last several months directed specifically to this disease. There are therapeutics that are now in clinical study to actually treat patients with conditions, and these trials have actually started. Some of these are new chemical entities, extremely. Some of them are that have been developed for other conditions. So I really do see that we'll be able to treat patients who are infected and to prevent the fatalities that will come from them without any treatment. So the categories of therapeutics, it really spans the full gamut of every dent in the armor that this virus has and the way that we as humans respond to this kind of infection. So that's exciting.
And Dr.
Go ahead.
Libman, is there anything you would like to add on that in terms of what kinds of innovations you're seeing coming out of this?
Well, I would actually say that probably the biggest innovation has been the way that regulatory and bureaucratic hurdles have been dropped here.
I see.
Because, I mean, I agree completely. There's we have a lot of science that we didn't have a few years ago. So we have a lot of movement on drugs and vaccines and all of that, and tremendous increases in communication and sharing of information. But most importantly to me is the fact that in the view of this emergency, I mean, nobody wants to take risks for nothing. But in this case, I think regulatory agencies everywhere and all the associated hurdles that usually slow this down tremendously, for good reason under normal circumstances, have been dropped quite quickly, and they have allowed development and studies and communication of information to happen much, much faster than it has ever happened before.
Excellent. That's hopeful. As we parsed through the questions, there was a theme that we saw that we kind of were able to summarize in the following. And I'll address this to Dr. Josh Luke, to Dr. Libman, and to Mark, and I'll let you each weigh in on this. And that is kind of this idea that it felt as if, or it appeared as if, that no one was ready for this pandemic, and that the methods for dealing with it were just antiquated or behind the times or just completely unready. And so my question would be for you is, for the three of you, if you could just answer briefly, is that sentiment true? If not, give us some insight into how we've actually been looking at this as a nation, as the world, from a medical and scientific perspective. So I'll start with you, Dr. Libman. What's your perspective on that?
Well, so I'd first say, I would say that it's not that we have been unprepared. We've had a lot of warning, from SARS to avian flu to H1N1 to Ebola. We've had a lot of practice runs at this, and I think almost every place has made, some sort of reasonable preparations and planning, both at the disaster management level and at the more general level of what to do for these particular types of illnesses. It's obviously imperfect, and already there's been a lot of pointing at things like, for example, the slowness of the American system to roll out testing, which really was a bureaucratic problem more than anything else, and a bit of a fixation on regulation without recognizing the importance of getting even imperfect testing out there. So it certainly hasn't been perfect, but we have had a lot of chance to set up preparedness, and I think most places, within the limit of what humans can manage in these kinds of settings, we actually are much better prepared and set up than we would have been, and than we were, for example, at the time of SARS.
Okay. And Dr. Josh Luke, what's your view on that? This sensation that people have that, oh my gosh, this just hit us out of nowhere, and nobody's been prepared for this. No one's been thinking about this. What kind of counterpoint would you offer to that sentiment?
Yeah, I'm a Gen Xer. I'm 47 years old, and we've never lived through a pandemic, nor have the millennials or the Gen Z. So it's a little bit understandable to see why it took a few days longer for people to react, at least the general public, once the government said, hey, we need to take this seriously. Everybody listen for a few minutes here. I think what's still frustrating as we tape this, on the 19th, is you see pictures of spring break and kids on the beaches. That the goal with this is to nip this in the bud. And the way to do that is to stay home, stay to yourself. And by no coincidence, yesterday was the first day, March 18th, that China reported no new cases. So, guys, I don't know if you've been to China. I've done a couple keynotes over there, and the volume of people is overwhelming to me when I was there on the streets. And if they can pull this off, we certainly can. And I saw that 60% of the United States cases are in 10 counties. So we still have an opportunity to contain this and really to get back to normal life, hopefully by May, if we do this. But if we don't work together to do this, we're going to have a bigger problem. And on the hospital front, and I've been addressing this on LinkedIn each day, 90% of those who get it are testing negative, but it's the 60% that are in 10 counties that are going to put pressure on the hospitals in those counties in New York, Washington, and California at present. So if we can contain this thing and keep it to those counties, then it's much more manageable. But until we do that, we need everybody on board, folks. And that's what we're going to get to, how we work through this. But for now, we need everybody on board to use social distancing and to just stick with your family and use the standard precautions, washing your hands and everything else. And if we do that for 4 or 5 weeks, I think we'll be looking in the rearview mirror sooner rather than later.
Oh, that's encouraging and hopeful. And so, folks, keep those questions coming in. I see them pouring in here to Riel. Keep those questions coming in. I'm going to move ahead and keep us moving here because we've just got so much we want to cover. The next bucket of question that came in was around daily life, and I know if it's felt anything like what it's felt like here at my household, this last week for you has probably been, if not the most confusing, probably right up there with the most confusing time of your life, the most topsy-turvy. It's likely the most disturbing time any of us can remember. 9/11 was certainly an extremely difficult time, but we're reaching new levels of fear and confusion. And as Dr. Josh Luke just said, this is something many of us have never experienced. So I want to spend some time talking about daily life, how we as business people who also happen to be parents, brothers and sisters, children of folks who need help, how should we be thinking about daily life in the context of the fact that we still need to generate sales and revenue, and we still have a business to run, we still have jobs that we need to do. There's a little humorous thing here on the screen. The toilet paper's in the news a lot, and I know we have some role models like this gentleman here who are hoarding it, and then others that are helping people. We want to be more like that young man there, and as a panel, try to help you understand how this cuts into daily life and how you can be thinking about how to take steps forward. So there are a lot of sales and marketing people here today, and the questions that have been coming in from you, I will paraphrase, are things like, what the heck do I do right now? How do I pick up the phone? How do I talk to somebody? How do I even reach out to somebody in a time like this without coming off like a jerk, like an insensitive, tone-deaf person? Dr. Josh, let me just address this one to you then, because not only are you looking at this from the medical perspective, but also you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, you still have a business to run. How are you looking at this right now?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I actually live here in Southern California, and I got, was able to talk to both KTLA Channel 5 and NBC News 4 about my last book that talked about becoming an engaged healthcare consumer, becoming an EHC. And the reason that that's more important now than ever is you're really being forced to become an EHC. And for those of you Gen Xers, millennials, and Gen Zers, the only way you are going to be able to afford health insurance in the future is if you engage in the healthcare process, just like you do when you buy a house, just like you do when you buy a car. And you're being forced to do that. And so my book that came out in 2019 is called Health Wealth for You. It's on Amazon. It went to bestseller on launch day, but now more than ever, to prepare for another pandemic, to figure out how to live healthy through a pandemic, I call it a 3P plan. The 3 Ps are to have a plan based on personalized and preventative medicine. So engaging in this process is the most critical thing you can do. And if you are a boomer, it's not too late to do that as well. And to answer your question directly, the book that came out before that also hit bestseller on launch day was called Health Wealth, Is Healthcare Bankrupting Your Business? So that's written for businesses of all sizes. If you're an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, or a small business owner, either of those books will serve the purpose. If you're a mid-sized business or a larger business, Health Wealth Is Healthcare Bankrupting Your Business might be a great start. But many brokers and even companies have actually bought copies of Health Wealth for You and given it to their employees as a gift, as a holiday gift for an offsite or whatever retreat, because the way companies survive with healthcare hyperinflation is by getting their employees to engage. Because when you shift to a high deductible plan and put that burden on your employees, if they still choose the bigger shiny hospital without doing any research, even if they're not finding out if it's better or less expensive, and sometimes the big shiny hospital is better or less expensive, my point is engage, then the company overspends as well, and we call that wasteful healthcare spending.
And you know, as I looked at many of the questions that came in, given that there's a lot of salespeople, a lot of marketing folks involved here, a lot of executives, Mark, I'm going to address this question to you. The general question was kind of around like, how likely is it that this international travel, these restrictions that we have on travel, how likely is that that's going to last through the summer? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, it's one of these questions that we really don't know the answer to, but I think the travel restrictions will lift probably in the same order that they were installed. So, you know, countries that first installed them will lift them, you know, the next. And the question is when will they all be gone? But my gut feel is that we're likely going to have to deal with travel restrictions through the summer. I might be a little bit pessimistic there. I might be better than that, but that's my sense.
And you know, the economy obviously is weighing heavily on everyone's mind. Larry, I'm going to address this one to you then. So let's imagine that, as Mark said, this is, you know, here for another couple of months and nobody really knows for sure, right? How do you think, Larry, as a business owner, as an executive, how do you think the economy will survive during this time? And what would be your guidance around how to start to think about the economic picture here?
So in terms of the economics, you know, governments are making efforts in terms of putting packages together, but we know that the longer that this goes on, those can only go so far. You can't have everybody not working and being paid for by the government forever and ever and ever. Bills do have to get paid. You know, what we can say is that we've had other economic shocks before. The world has gotten through many of these, and you started off by saying that these type of events make us stronger. While you're going through them, they are very painful. Mm-hmm. In terms of business, because you brought up the point before in terms of, you know, should we be talking to clients? Should we be having conversations at all? You know, we are in a digital age right now, and certainly we have a lot of folks from the print industry, but there's more opportunity than ever to engage with people. Now, this is the one time you can actually call people directly and have real conversation. Ask how they're doing. Check on their welfare. How's their family? And how are the employees managing? And that's an opportunity to see how we can all help in terms of some of the things that we can do, in terms of offering the skills and abilities that you have as needs-based. So I think from a sales point of view, we all have to be more needs-based and really listen to what is irking and what is the problem. What do people need right now? They want a vaccine. What do people need? They want to get back to normal. Will the economy handle it? It has to. And I think once we get to the other side, I think we'll all start to feel better once we can start to see downhill that this is improving like in China. So yes, I believe the economy will survive, but it is going to be painful for a while.
And Dean, did we happen to get you back on the line? I want to address a question to you. Are you here?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you now. Okay, excellent.
Right.
So
yeah.
there are a lot of folks, men and women like you, like me here, that are in sales, that are in marketing, that need to continue to drive business forward. And I think right before you dropped off, the question I lobbed to you was, look, how do we do this in a way that is not insensitive or tone deaf to the times that we find ourselves in? So since you're in that seat, I would really love for you to talk to the audience here about how you're viewing this. What are you doing and what are you seeing in that situation?
Yeah, and it's something that's coming up a lot in my circles. I have a lot of people that I've been talking to that are in sales. And my general thought on this, Dave, is, as I've shared with you already, is when we talk privately, is it's really just common sense. I mean, I'm of the belief that right now is not the time to be out there aggressively selling your wares and making sales pitches. And it's the time right now is to be helping our clients in any way we can, just to be there for them. And that's the approach I'm taking. Certainly there are businesses right now that are profiting from this, as there always are in every situation. But by and large, the most of us who are not profiting from this should really right now just be there for our clients, to offer help in any way that we can. That may not be a way that we normally would offer to help our clients. And the time for selling and the time for normal business will make sense when it makes sense. And I think it's just really being in tune with common sense right now and common decency and having compassion for your clients right now. And nobody wants an aggressive sales pitch. I mean, everybody right now is just trying to make sense of working from home and how their business is going to go forward. And I think as a sales professional, you have to be in tune with that and really just offer yourself as a resource, a friend, whatever you can be to your clients. And the time for normal business will come when it's supposed to. And you'll know that if you're in tune with your clients and you're have empathy, then you'll know when the right time is.
And Dean, I know that there's a lot of folks here that are like you, print and mail, promotional products, direct mail, marketing, offering these kinds of essential services to organizations throughout North America. When we were talking before, you gave me this insight into an interaction that you had with a customer. Love for you to share that if you can with the audience, just because it highlights the opportunities that do exist to help our customers in tough times like this. Would you be open to sharing that with us here?
Yeah, absolutely. I won't say who the client is just for their benefit, but I will tell the story because it is a great story in the sense that, I took the approach this week, early in the week, Sunday night into Monday, that I was just going to send an email out to all my regular clients and just with a pretty much the same note to everybody, maybe tweaked a little bit for each client. But the general gist of the note, Dave, was, hey, just thinking about you. Hoping that everyone's well, and if there's anything I can do for you, and I put in parentheses, I don't even really know what that is or what that looks like, but if there is, just know that I'm here for you and thinking of you and hoping that you're well. And really, it was just a note from the heart because I care about my clients, and a lot of people gave a lot of great responses, and one client in particular responded and said, "Thanks for the kind note, and speaking of what you can do for us, can you get us a bunch of hand sanitizer, LOL?" And I was like, okay. And I didn't know how to respond to that at first. I'm like, are you serious, was my response, or is that just a joke? And they said, no, I'm very serious. Is there a way you can help? And because we have the ability with our ASI license to source promotional products, I knew that we had a way to do that. We can't get regular hand sanitizer bottles, but there's still one-off packets that you can get. And so we quickly worked with the client and helped them secure a serious amount of one-use rip open packets of hand sanitizer that they're going to brand. And so that's a way that you can help a client without really aggressively selling anything, but I was there and was able to help them. So you never know how you can help someone if you just put yourself out there.
That's wonderful. I bet you, Dean, there are hundreds of people right now furiously writing that down or sending text messages saying, hey, can we do the same? Can we help our local hospitals and such with that kind of offer? So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. I'm going to keep us moving along here, folks. Next, to look at the business environment. And the reason why we're doing this, obviously, is we're all business people here in one way or another. And for those of us here on the line, selling and servicing our customers and keeping our businesses moving forward is imperative. I see questions coming in from some of the business leaders here in the executive saying, what am I supposed to do with my people? What about the new hires that I just brought in? What about new salespeople? What do I do with them? There's a lot of uncertainty around how this is going to roll forward. And so I'd love for, I'm going to address the first question to you again, Dean, and just get a little insight from you from the LCP perspective. How are you managing business continuity during this time? There's a lot of staff who maybe can't go in and do their work. There's people who are working from home. There's school closures. Life is upside down. How are you keeping your business? How are you continuing to operate during this time? What does it look like for you?
Yeah, it's because certainly it's new for all of us. Well, LCP has been great, very proactive in terms of the response to all the craziness that broke down last week. And we have, as everybody who's on this call knows, when you're in the manufacturing business like we all are, a lot of people have to actually be on site. But we've implemented extra measures in terms of sanitation and all the ways, and extra cleaning with our cleaning crew that we used in terms of extra sanitation for cleaning, just for our employees' sake, and really limiting visits to the facility from outside vendors. But we've also there's work to do, and the work has to get done. We still have clients that have work that was ongoing that needs to get done, and that work is getting done. But we've also, which I think is great, is the management team at LCP has offered employees the opportunity that normally don't work from home, the opportunity to work from home, and offering up additional licenses of our Citrix software to allow people to log in through VPN and do their job from their home if they feel more comfortable. because at the end of the day, we're in the client services business, and we have to continue to serve our clients that do have projects that are ongoing. So,
Yep.
but looking out a couple of weeks, Dave, it's hard to say because I think everyone again who's a printer who's on this call knows that there was probably work that was in the shop or in the production before this all broke. But now the next 2 weeks we'll revisit that and see what that looks like in a couple of weeks.
Yep. You said something there about folks working remote, and that's significant for a lot of people. One of the things that we found, we did this, I guess it was yesterday. It seems like a year ago already, but yesterday, our whole staff is remote, and what we decided to do yesterday at lunchtime was just have a virtual lunch over Zoom. And so we opened up a Zoom meeting. Everybody at noon jumped into that Zoom meeting. We just all ate together, and just being able to see each other's faces. Like Alex, Sam, Bob, the others who are here. Imagine if your staff is lonely or is feeling isolated. Just being able to see somebody else as they're enjoying lunch, cracking jokes, does a lot for the spirits and helps keep your people together. So another idea for some of you who might be wondering how to how to adapt to what's going on. Dean, I'm gonna throw the next question at you, and then Larry, if you could also think about your response to this. There were a lot of questions that came in around how you, both Dean and Larry, how are you changing your products and your services to help customers adapt to this shelter-in-place economy that we now find ourselves in? What are you doing to change your products and services to incorporate this new way of living? So let me throw that first at you, Larry. What are you doing to adapt your style there?
Well, our products are already set for like a virtual world. So in other words, what we do, we're really digital innovation, and effectively what we provide is virtual agents and interactivity that is through all digital channels. So our business was really all about this new environment and setting up for this, and we certainly wouldn't have wanted this to happen, but things like Zoom technology, which all of a sudden everyone's adopting, the next thing is anyone that goes to a website, if you can have an interactive agent, which is very much like dealing with a real person, if you can send personalized content and videos to each and every customer, pulling data, that's a super helpful thing. I see that you're pointing at this slide. Did you want me to make some comments?
Let's talk about this, because I think this is relevant to what you were just saying.
Well, this is interesting. Back in 2009, when H1N1 hit, we had some involvement with members of the McGill University Health Center through Dr. Michael Churchill-Smith, and we met up actually with Mike Libman, who you can see on the screen. And H1N1 was another big scare. It was after SARS, and now we were concerned about potentially another pandemic. So what we did, this is an opportunity for us to put, as you can see, this type of website together that had chaptered videos which answered frequently asked questions about this H1N1. And then we also set up like some news feeds and podcasts and FAQs. So collaboratively working with those experts, we got distribution on it. We used latest technology in terms of chaptering. You can see even then we were employing all the social media channels and connecting with everyone and distributing it. So, really this is communication and time-sensitive communication. And I think a lot of what we're focused on is continuing that and making things virtual. And as I've said in the past, I still see the face-to-face as well as the digital, and the opportunities for advancement and innovation through what we do is a great opportunity.
Yeah, I think now perhaps more than ever, Dean, this probably resonates with you and for my PSP friends here. Folks, maybe you call yourself a printer, maybe you don't, but ultimately I think we're all in the communications business. And I think that's what you're touching on here, Larry, is that, this information needs to get out. And there is going to be a point in time when, folks, your services are needed even more than ever. A couple things that are interesting that I'm seeing come in through the chat. One, I just wanted to call out from Alex. I think when we were talking about how to help people through this time, how to help our staff, he was saying a large healthcare benefits employer in Dallas is doing things like working with personal trainers to create 15 to 30-minute home workout routines to help their employees since they can't access general workout equipment. So there's going to be creative ideas like that not only can you employ for your staff, for your people, but also as organizations that I think you can start to use to provide your customers with ways to adapt to this new way of living. I'm going to keep the questions moving on. There's just so much that we still want to cover here, and I definitely want to leave time for the questions. So before I get to those questions that have been coming in, I want to talk about something really important, and that's, Larry, you just talked about it a bit here, is communication and staying connected, whether that be with our clients, with our prospects, with our friends, with our family. This virus has profoundly changed how we're communicating. And so, I'm going to address a question to you, Dean, and then ask a few to Mark and Michael as well in this spirit here. But because there's so many folks here that deal with direct mail and with print, Dean, the questions that we saw many times were around the United States Postal Service, and I'm sure the same might be true for other locations, but the question was particularly pointed at the United States. Do we have confidence that if we produce direct mail, that the post office will actually get that delivered? Dean, what's your perspective on that?
Do you want the answer I gave you on the call yesterday?
Yes. Yes.
Well, my answer is this question could be a good question for any webinar, because COVID or not, that's always the concern all of us in this industry have, is the post office. In all seriousness, they sometimes seem to be working against us and with us. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, it's a concern. But I mean, the post office, as far as we know, it's business as usual. We've still had mailings go out. Mailings are going out that were still in the works during when this all broke. So I don't think there's any immediate concern to seeing any loss in confidence in getting the mail delivered. I think we all still see our postal workers delivering mail and through the neighborhood. So it's still, yeah, I joke, but I don't joke about that, because that's a concern. COVID or not, that's a concern that we all have at any point with the post office.
Well, there's a set of related questions that came in related to direct mail specifically. So listen up, folks. If you're involved in direct mail, if you use direct mail to engage with your customers, and I'm going to direct this back to our healthcare professionals here. So Mark and Dr. Libman, maybe Dr. Josh Luke, if you want to weigh in on this. How confident are we that this does not get transmitted on paper? So Dr. Libman, let me start with you there as head of infectious diseases. What is your thought on that relative to, if folks are still using direct mail, what are the chances that this is transmitted on paper?
Yeah, I think this rises especially because there was a study that got a lot of publicity, an experimental kind of study where they contaminated a whole bunch of different surfaces, and they showed that the virus could survive for different periods of time. And I think cardboard was a day or something like that. But even if the virus, in an experimental setting, if a virus can survive for a day on cardboard, that doesn't translate necessarily to a risk, because in real life, we don't expect that whoever is packaging something is also going to be coughing all over the product, and then there's just the question of basic hygiene, which we maybe have forgotten a bit, but we have to get used to again, which is that you have to kind of assume the stuff coming in the mail is not particularly clean. I think none of us would, lick the box or the envelope ourselves after the postman delivers it. But in particular, it's when you handle stuff, it's a good idea that then before you eat or touch your face or whatever, you just wash your hands again. And then there's really whatever risk there might be, which would be minimal to begin with, becomes completely negligible.
Dean, has this question come up from your customers yet, those that do direct mail with you?
No, not yet. But I know we were talking about it, but it hasn't been brought up yet, because quite honestly, just in full transparency, Dave, I think a lot of our clients and a lot of people's clients are still just trying to get their head around remote working and what things are going to look like going forward. But I wouldn't be surprised if that does come up. I got to think that it's a question that on everyone's mind. And I think the more we can, as an industry, get that information out there with the support of the medical community to know that it really isn't a threat, then I think it'll put people's minds at ease. But so I do expect that question will start coming up once people get around to looking at doing projects again.
My friend Brian, I see here in the chat, he says that the USPS sent out a notification yesterday confirming that the Surgeon General have indicated there is currently no evidence that COVID-19 is being spread through mail. Brian, I know you have my email. Do you mind sending that to me? I'd love to be able to get that out to the audience so that everybody can have that. I think, Dean, as you said, this is likely a question that'll come up. So let's say, Mark, do you have any insight on this? Anything you want to add to the transmission of COVID through paper or on paper?
You know, I agree 100% with Michael. I mean, the risk is strictly theoretical, and just practicing standard hygiene will prevent any of this theoretical from ever being realized. There's no evidence at all now of any transmission through these kinds of materials.
Okay. Riel, get those questions ready, folks. Continue to send those questions in. I'm going to turn over to Q&A with your expert panel here in just a moment. I want to hit on one more question here, and it actually is related to something I saw just come in through the chat here. Lily, I hope I'm going to read this from Lily. She's one of the folks here that's with you here in the virtual room, and then I'm going to tie it to this last question here. She says, I care for patients with metastatic breast cancer. For these newly diagnosed within the week, getting the news over the phone or through Skype is just not the same because we don't have a way to be physically held and hugged, and it's very frustrating, and that's just heartbreaking. I can only imagine how difficult it is to be able to communicate some of this news without being able to physically engage with our patients, with our customers. And so that kind of is a good way to segue into this last question here that I want to tee up before I go to the real-time Q&A. You know, with COVID now and as we move through this, is this going to move us to some sort of new, you know, virtual reality or virtual presence, some sort of new way of working with others that that is, you know, not face to face? So I'm going to try to hit each of the panelists here as quickly as I can, just get their perspective on this. Dr. Josh Luke, I'm going to start with you here. So I know that you speak at a lot of conferences. I'm sure those have all been canceled. What do you think is going to happen? Is there going to be a change here in some sort of virtual presence, some sort of way of engaging with our audiences that's not face to face?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I actually have been getting emails daily. So to answer your question, almost all of my events through mid-May have been canceled to date. I wrote an article on LinkedIn at Dr. Josh Luke encouraging associations to be patient. And if your event is in late May or certainly after June 1st, please do not cancel it yet. Not for my sake, but for your sake. I mean, you need to take a leadership role. You are the leader of the industry. That's what they pay their dues for, is to look for you for guidance. And so what we can, I go back to what I said earlier. If we do this right and contain for 4 weeks, then the worst of it is hopefully behind us by the end of April, and we can start to get back to semi-normal like they are in China already. So folks, I would encourage you as an industry, as an association, to encourage your event hosts not to cancel anything after June 1st, at least until mid-April, till we see if we are getting a handle on this. But remember another thing, cases are going to continue to go up through mid-April. There's no question about that. The goal is to start seeing them come down by the end of April. Right now is kind of a best case scenario from what I can gather. So don't be alarmed by the media, but understand that if we can start to feel better about this by the end of April, there's a chance that life could be semi-normal in late May, June, and July. If it's not by June or July, then we're going to have another webinar to talk about how we move forward. So the second part of your question is what are some other things you can do? I'm looking at an email from one of the events that rescheduled. That's another thing. First of all, reschedule for the fall. As a public speaker, guys, spring and fall are my travel seasons. The events kind of die down in summer and winter. It's spring and fall. So reschedule to the fall. They're going to have a webinar. They rescheduled a May event to October, and on the same day in May, they're going to have a webinar. They've asked me to put together a panel, things like that. I've also, I'll be offering, 50% off my Keynote honorarium to associations who have had to cancel or reschedule for the rest of this year, just as a means to help, because everybody, official recession started yesterday, I think is when the announcements came out. So little things we can do to help whomever. I also suggested, hey, if you're having an event late summer, why not offer a 2-for-1? If they already registered, let them bring a colleague or a friend at half price. And I wrote an article, I think I mentioned already, at Dr. Josh Luke on LinkedIn, saying here are so many other things you can do. Have a handshake-free zone in the swag bag. put a little personal pack of wet wipes, some hand disinfectant, a sheet of things to remember. Remind them at the after hours parties to still stay to themselves. And I'm going to try and have a lot of these folks that are doing these things on my podcast. The name of the podcast is Spend Less on Healthcare with Dr. Josh Luke. So check those things out. And I'd love to hear what other people have to say about how to, kind of postpone your event to the fall and some other creative things to do in the meantime.
Very good. Some good ideas, and I know there's folks here that can actually help execute on those types of things. So hopefully, Dr. Josh just gave you some insights there, folks, some things that you can start to think about as we pull ourselves through this. I want to add one thing that I think is helpful to this, and then I'm going to turn to all of the questions that you all have. The question here is around communicating with customers, communicating with prospects, communicating with the world. And one of the things that has really been on my heart, and some of you have taken me up on this, is, I think especially right now, we're not looking at communication being B2B, business to business. We're not thinking about communication as B2C, business to consumer. I would really encourage us to look at it as H to H, human to human, as a way of engaging with people at a level that they need it, and that is imperative for helping the nation, helping the world move forward. And so as an example, some of you have taken me up on this. I included my cell phone number in some of the communication that we did through email and on LinkedIn. And I can't tell you the number of just incredibly both inspiring, but also just heartbreaking messages that many of you have sent in to me. So I'm going to encourage Riel again, put my cell phone number there for everybody. That's my real number. I want to hear from you. I believe we need to stay connected. We need to help one another. Folks, I'm not looking to sell you anything. I just want to give you an encouraging word. If you need encouragement, if you want to bounce ideas, if you just need to know that there's somebody else in your situation, shoot me a text day or night. That's the kind of thing we need to do to cut through in today's world. So on the screen now, folks, you've got your incredible panel. We're going to try to answer as many questions as we can. We had allocated about 15 minutes here. I highly doubt we're going to get through all the questions in 15 minutes, so I don't even know where to begin. There's just so many questions, both that Riel has prepared as well as the ones that you're sending in now. So folks, go ahead and send those questions in. I'm going to try to hit as many of them as I can. As quickly as I can here. So panel, if you can be concise in your answer. There's a lot of the questions that are just like this one here. When I'm making phone calls to my prospects and my clients, it feels like they don't want to talk right now. What should I be doing? Dean, you kind of touched on that, but what kind of advice would you give our friends who are trying to do that?
I would just say come from a place of serving. If they don't want to talk, or just offer just like I said, the kind words of just saying that you're there from them, and just know that right now may not be the time to be talking to your clients, that they're not in the mood to, or they don't have the time to. So just come from a place of empathy and perspective taking, and just think about your clients from their perspective is the best thing I can tell people right now.
Larry, from your perspective in your business, there's a question here around what kind of content should I share that's valuable to people right now to keep their spirits up? What's your thought on that?
Well, I think there's content related to all the issues with regard to staying at home. I think people start to go stir crazy. Many of them aren't really used to it. So I think that there's a lot of messages with regard to working from home, messages with regard to what's going to happen next, because a lot of people are wondering, when am I going to go back to work? Am I going to go back to work? Am I going to have a job? So I think the first thing we have to do from a content is answer what's on people's mind. And we know what those questions are. So really dealing with the sensitive issues that people have and communicating those using whatever capabilities we have through print, through mail, through email, through video, whatever.
And folks, Riel sent you the cell phone number 949-375-4459 there in chat. I've got my phone here. If you have a question, you can also text it to me there. I'll try to get it here on the air with the panel. Riel, I'm going to drop to the bottom of your question list here, just if you're trying to keep track of where I'm at. Interesting question here to the panel. Let's see who wants to answer this one. What do you think will be the most relevant and important things to our customers when we return to the new normal? So actually, Dr. Michael Libman, I'm going to throw that at you. I know that you said you went into medicine because you don't have an inkling to business, but I'd really love to hear what your thoughts are on that. What do you think is going to be the most important thing for us business people to think about when we return to the new normal?
That's a tough one. I would say that because, I don't know where any individual is going to be after this. And probably the first question is going to be trying to find out, what's happened to them and what they need at this time. It's probably going to be the first question. I think everybody's going to land up in a lot of different places after this, and it won't be where they started. And probably the first thing is to try and figure that out, and then see what they need and what can be offered.
Very insightful. Dr. Josh Luke, what's your thought on that? What do you think customers are going to need? What's going to be most important to them as we draw ourselves out of this? What are your thoughts on that?
I think coming together as one, as a country, I think there's some positives, and I think that is going to permeate down into businesses, both large and small. I think everyone coming from a place of serving, being less selfish right now. There's so many people saying, hey, if it's not a priority to you, make it a priority to others. I do think also, just to bring it back to where I spend most of my time, I think health and taking care of yourself. We've been talking for a couple of years that healthcare is no longer reactive in this country, which is what it's been for the last 40 years. Hyperinflation has forced us to engage. And as a result, the millennials have brought this feeling of healthcare is actually healthy lifestyles, not just going to the hospital. I say often, it gets tweeted a lot when I'm giving a keynote, that in the health system of the future, about 80% of the time somebody presents to the emergency room, it will be a sign of failure of the system, because the new system is to keep you well and healthy and at home. And that means at work too. And I'm also encouraged to see that a lot of companies are going to realize, hey, people working from home is actually still productive, in some cases more productive. It's again another millennial trait that they're kind of forcing us to step back and consider, and because that's who they are and that's how they're most productive. And I'm one who praises the millennials in my writings and in my podcast, so by no means is that perceived to be a negative. It's a positive. But I think all these things combined, there's going to be a different culture in business, and that culture is going to be more forgiving, less selfish, and also more health focused. And I'm encouraged by that.
Dean and Larry, I'm going to address this question to you two here. So we'll start with you, Dean. How do you see marketing in the next year? What do you think the most useful mechanism for marketing is going to be? And I know, Dean, you don't have a crystal ball, neither do you, Larry, but what do you think? How would you answer that?
So, right, no crystal ball, but I can tell you from a business perspective, I do know when it comes to our clients and how we're going to be able to help them, kind of tailing off of what Dr. Josh was just talking about. Business is going to be different. You don't come out of something like this and just say, okay, we're going to go back to the way it was. No, I think this is going to force businesses to say, hey, wait a minute, maybe we do need to look at how we've been doing this. Maybe we don't need to attend as many conferences, or maybe we don't need to send our sales force all over the country on all those meetings. And it's going to change the way businesses engage with their target audiences and how they go to market. I do, and I said this to everybody when we were prepping for this, I do think this is going to place a higher premium on high value targeted direct mail, because I do think people might be less inclined to take as many meetings. I'm not going to say we're all going to be cocooned the rest of our lives, but I do think it's going to change. I think it's going to force businesses to look at a different way of doing business, and hence, how are we going to get in front of people more? So from a straight tactical answer, Dave, I do see one area. I do see that this is going to place a higher premium on the use of smart, targeted, effective direct mail, especially in the B2B world.
And Larry, what about you from your position there as president at BlueRush? How are you viewing where the world of marketing is going to be a year forward?
Well, I think the venue that we're using right now is an example of what we're going to see more of in the future. Humans still like face-to-face when you can. There's just less time. And at one time, if you think of communication as a three-legged stool, there was face-to-face, meeting with people directly, phone, that was the next best, and then there was mail and email. In between there, with the phone and face-to-face, is something like a Zoom meeting. So when we look at, a lot of companies are going to be hurting after. They're going to need to be more efficient, more effective, They're going to want to save time. They're going to want to save money. You're going to think of a new marketing mix is what is the right balance of the face-to-face, the Zoom, the phone, and the mail and the email, and technologies like this and interactive technologies like BlueRush offer are really going to be mainstays of the future.
And I know we're right at the hour, which is what I promised we would hold everybody here for. But folks, you've got an incredible panel here. Please keep those questions coming. We won't be able to answer all of them, but I want to get to as many as possible. If you have to drop off, I want to leave you with this message. We're not going to stop here, but I just want to leave everyone with this message in case that you are dropping off now. What I want you all to hear, what we want you to know is that we're in this together, friends, family, partners. You need to do everything you can to help. We need to use our imaginations, our creativity, our ingenuity in ways that we've probably never even considered. You heard some of the panel today speaking about innovation. There's going to be incredible innovation that comes out of this. We need to extend our ambition, I believe, beyond ourselves. We need to think outside of what we need, because it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about all of us, our families, our friends, our loved ones. It's about humanity on the whole here. That's the scope of what we're dealing with here. And so if I had to summarize what I've heard from Mark Cochran, from Dr. Michael Libman, from Dr. Josh Luke, the health professionals, and those that I hear in our government, it's, we need to take precautions. Don't expose yourself to other people. Don't think just about yourself. Save as many lives as you can. Be responsible. Do the things that you're being encouraged to do, because this is more about everyone else than it is about you. Think of one another. Yes, it's going to be inconvenient for some time. You've heard what the folks here on the panel today think we're looking at. It may be more, it may be less. Yes, it's going to be inconvenient for weeks, months, maybe longer. But this is something we can do together. We need to deal with this gracefully. We need to deal with it with kindness, with love, with intelligence. And with that, I believe if we all stay in this together, we can turn this around, men and women. We will turn this around. And so I don't want to lose any of you. If you want to stick around, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to try to get to a few more questions. Panel, if you need to drop off, I know, for example, Dr. Libman, you're in the hospital there. If anybody needs to drop off, go ahead. I'm going to try to get to a few more questions here. One of the questions here is for you, Dean, and for me. So Dean, I'll address it to you, and then I'll add some insight if I have any here. It says, do you see any markets emerging from this and having a greater need for print versus how we've been currently moving more towards digital and social media? Dean, what a great question. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, as I just mentioned, I do see right off the bat in the B2B world, I 100% believe that this is going to change the way B2B marketers look at how they engage with prospects and high value prospects. With a lot of account-based marketing, a lot of that account-based marketing is primarily done through products where they're doing marketing automation and email drip campaigns. And but I know that that's going to change, because their sales representatives may not be traveling the country as much, and they're going to need to still get in front of those people. So as a general answer to that, I do see a huge uptick in use of direct mail in the B2B arena, for sure, as an initial answer to that. Other markets, I would need more time to think about those, because like I said, I haven't even given that much thought, but I'm sure there will be. But B2B for sure, Dave.
And what do you think, Larry? What's your view on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I see a great place for print, and I don't think it's going to stop. I think the difference is going to be printed content is going to be augmented. Everyone hears about augmented reality and what does that mean, and most people don't have devices to necessarily handle it, but we all have a phone, and through a QR code or through a Pearl, you can take that beautifully presented printed piece and augment it with personalized experiences, with personalized videos, with entire sites dedicated to one person at a time. And the ultimate niche marketing is really one-to-one. So we're there, and I think it's going to be achieved with print, with digital, with innovation and interactivity in Zoom, Zoom-like products.
Folks, it's just incredible to be able to sit behind all of your questions and comments here. I'm going to read a few of them just so that you all feel connected to one another. As again, like I've said many times, I believe that's really important. This is from Bill just a few seconds ago. I think that the new normal in terms of approaching clients will be more laid back and more of the mindset that we are here to help. And he says, that's where it should have been always anyways. but we need to look at things from the client's perspective and what we can do that will best serve them. Beautifully said, Bill. Completely agree. Just so true. Folks, men and women, I'm going to hold us another few moments longer here. It's just not possible to get all the questions. If there's something burning on your mind for Mark Cochran, for Dr. Libman, for Larry, for Dr. Josh Luke, for Dean over at LCP, or for me, get those questions in now. I'm going to wait just a little bit longer here. We're going to get the recording out to you. We're going to try to follow up with everybody to get this out to you. Hopefully this has been useful to you. Please let us know there in the chat if this has been something that has helped you think about this in new ways. Please let us know if we've encouraged you. We want to know that this was of use to you and of value to you. It took significant time on the part of the panelists, who I want to thank. Thank you all for your time and for your energy today. Folks, if you want to get connected with them, you can scan the QR code there with your phone, and you can get their contact information. So thank you to all of them. Terry, I see you saying thank you. It's nice to see you here, Terry. So from my side here, with this incredible panel, Dean, Dr. Josh Luke, Larry Lubin, Dr. Michael Libman, and Mark Cochran, I want to say thank you for being here today. As I said a moment ago, we really look at this as something that we're all in together. And so if there's anything that any of us can do who have spoken today or been on this panel, do not hesitate to reach out. You have my personal cell phone number if you just need a message of encouragement. Hang in there. Together we can make it through this. There are going to be some incredible innovations that come out of this, some incredible stories of how we as business people can serve our clients, how families come together, how the nation comes together, and how the world comes together to fight through this. Hang in there, men and women. And with that, I'm going to bring this to a close. I look forward to talking to you all soon. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Keep your spirits up, keep your head up, and we'll talk to you soon, everybody. Bye-bye.
Great job, David.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone.